growing up, still are today. And it's through them that we got the invitation to come here and share our story with you today. So, we're missionaries with Adventist Frontier Missions in Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is just north of Australia and famous as formerly part of the Cannibal Islands, and great biodiversity and linguistic diversity as well. There's some 800 plus languages in the country, so I don't speak any of those except for the trade language that everyone speaks. Oops. And that's called Pidgin English or Tokpizin.
We have a Tokpizin Bible, which we have out back, and we will be happy to help you read or read to you any passage of scripture you like.
So, in our little area, where all the stars are different churches or branch Sabbath schools that we have. And this is very remote. Oh, there, it skips one. Okay. In the far corner of the screen is where we, right underneath the blue box, is where we get on the river from the highway when we travel upriver. And we stay on the river all day. And 10 hours later or so, we get to May River, which is, just right here.
Sorry about walking out of your box.
So we're the most remote mission that Adventist Frontier Missions has, as far as the amount of time you have to travel to get from town to where we're doing missionary work.
So I would like to tell you more about Adventist Frontier Missions. That's the organization we work for. It is a supporting ministry. It is very carefully working within the structure of the Adventist Church, but it is not going through the funding of like Sabbath School, 13 Sabbath offering. It is separately funded. So Adventist Frontier Missions, we have a Frontiers magazine. Quite a few of you picked those up as you came in, and we put articles in it. They're stories about our lives. And we also have a newsletter that we send out. We prefer email, but we can send it paper. A lot of you got blue papers. This is to sign up to get our newsletter. I encourage you to do that. We want to be in contact with our people, and I would love to have you sign up for our newsletter. And we're praying this furlough. We are in need of more support, both one-time gifts and faithful monthly gifts. A lot of you have the green paper too. Green for money, it's easier for me to keep track of. But we are needing that. And I pray that you would listen to the Holy Spirit as you think about this. And we're happy to talk to you more about that later. I'm not going to just call for an appeal. I would rather you pray about it and be able to make the decision as you feel the Holy Spirit calling you. But I want you to know that is what the papers in your hands are. And if you didn't get one, we'll be happy to set you up there in the back table, and our greeters will help you with that. Our people are a river people. Kids learn to stand and walk around in a canoe about as fast as they learn to stand and walk around on solid ground. An interesting fact, as a missionary, one of the things you have to think about is called worldview. It has to do with how you think about the world. This morning, somebody reminded me, in the South, we have fire ants. That's just part of what you remember when you think about walking around without shoes on. The people where we live, the ground is not what's stable, it's the water. So when the river floods, in my brain, the water came up. No. The ground went down. the house sunk. Or we can't, they have their Sabbath schools under big trees. Well, sorry, we can't have any children's classes today because we don't have any ground, because the ground sunk under the river. I've literally heard these explanations for their world, and these are not explanations trying to sound funny. They are how they think. And as a missionary, one of our jobs is to learn, how do these people think? Because that is part of the key to reaching them for Christ. And hey, God created this earth with his breath. It doesn't really matter whether it's the ground or the water that doesn't move. God made it all. Another piece about our people, the people we serve, their staple food is called sago. It is the starch from the sago palm tree. And here's a picture of some young ladies. The tree has been cut down, cut into sections, and they are chopping the inside into sawdust. The next step of the process is to rinse that sawdust and get the starch to run out.
The tree is not like an oak or something else. Palm trees have a harder outer bark, and then the inside is more spongy. So
we're washing the spongy. Here I am helping with the washing step of the process. I have done all of it. Well, I've not yet chopped a tree down. I intend to do that sometime. But I'm helping washing. And yes, I'm standing in the water. I'm actually on a piece of board, because that's helpful, because you scoop water and pour it in. And if your feet are stirring up the mud, you're going to get mud in your food. So being on the board helps it be clean water as I rinse. What does it taste like? Let's start with the texture. It's gummy bears. That's these long burrito-shaped things. That's sago. They boil it, and if you've ever boiled starch, you can get a pretty solid thing. Well, that's what you've got, solid starch. So gummy bears, no sugar, and the flavor is going to be strongly impacted by the water you use to rinse it. So if you got mud in the water, it will taste like mud. If you got really rancid swamp water, then it tastes like swamp. But if you want to make it taste just a little better, when you're mixing it up, you can squeeze a lemon in.
Then it tastes spoiled. No, anyway.
Exactly what he said. My Western brain is like, tastes like sour milk. That's what my brain says. It's not the milky part, but this one tastes spoiled. Anyway, I have learned to enjoy eating their food, and sago goes really well with fish. And this is actually someone's meal. As we were headed downriver to come here, I shared this meal with someone. So I ate the first half, gave her the second half, and she enjoyed my extra pancakes, so it was even. One of the things that the New Guineans are very proud of, and so am I, is they do not waste a single part of the sago plant. This woman is using the leaves to make roofing material for the roof, which is behind her. Well, there's a roof just like it behind her. I'm not sure what roof she's replacing, but she is making shingles. This is a widow. Another thing to notice in the background of this picture, there are some sheets of roofing tin that are set up as a water collection. So she has fresh rainwater. Whenever it rains, she can get that water from her roof.
So last year, we had what was called Papua New Guinea for Christ. It was an evangelistic campaign throughout the country of Papua New Guinea. Several thousand people were baptized. Ted Wilson came, and lots of pastors and people came from Europe, from America, from Australia as guest speakers. Where I was at, again, we were quite remote. I was the speaker.
Our mission president asked him a couple months in advance, Orion, I would like to put your name as the guest speaker at May River Station. Would you do it? And he said yes.
So I spent a few months, not full time, but as I had time, these slides were all designed in English and then locked, so you couldn't adjust them, as in change the text or anything. So I had to go and cover up the text with a blank box, change the color to something that matched the picture, and then I could put in the Pidgin English version of every single slide so that those who are literate could read what I was saying as well as hearing it in their own language, as opposed to a language that a few people in the village have some understanding of, but they don't really grasp the full meaning of the English words much of the time. And so I wanted them to have it in their own language.
They loved it. They loved being able to see when he was reading things, especially they could read from the screen while hearing with their ears. And it feels validating for the language you understand, you see, and you hear.
So many times in Papua New Guinea, they feel that Pidgin English is not as good as actual English. And so whoever's the speaker will read from the English Bible, and there will be 1 or 2, maybe 5 people in the congregation that sort of understand that. And then he just on the fly translates it. But we have a version that was put together by a whole group from many different denominations, very scholarly people that did the translation. It's not a
We have a
it's not
true
a fly-by-night
translation of the Bible.
It's good. It's a good translation. There's a couple of places where your key text for Adventist beliefs doesn't quite fit anymore, but when you have the whole Bible, we can still teach all of our beliefs from the Bible, no problem.
It's all there. And hey, sometimes our key texts in English are not quite as true to the original language as we might like to think.
So anyway, so we had 43 people that were already preparing for baptism that were baptized. We did not want to just baptize people that have responded to an emotional appeal and don't know what they're getting into. So people that responded to the call for baptism, we said, great, we'll sign you up for classes wherever your home church is, and you can join the baptismal class.
One of the things that's very...
About the same time as this is we got, or just before this, we were given a set of Bible lessons in Tokpizin, teaching the 28 fundamental beliefs as a set of basically Sabbath school lesson materials. It's designed like the adult Sabbath school lesson, but it's teaching our 28 fundamental beliefs. And so I was able to make these available to the baptismal classes as a set of studies that the teachers could have, and they weren't just trying to before this, they were just trying to remember what they'd been taught when they were baptized and teach that to the others. And anyone that knows how much you remember from class, it makes it harder if you don't have any materials. And so part of what we are working on, these are very rough drafts that I got what was available, and I distributed it. I'm working on editing them, and as we can continue perfecting them, then they'll become available throughout more of the country as well.
One of the things that is done in Papua New Guinea is for the Sabbath school classes, your baptismal class or class ready is literally one of the Sabbath school classes. So baptismal class is one of the Sabbath school classes, and it usually has the best teacher and the best seats.
In Papua New Guinea, because of various problems they've had, they've just restricted baptisms not to elders but to ordained pastors. And as a result, baptisms have to be planned for, and you can't just say, oh, we have someone ready for baptism, we're going to baptize them in 2 weeks. No, it's in 6 months, someone from the mission will be coming again out to our area, and we can schedule a baptism at that time type deal. The area pastor it's called the district director. He lives about 7 hours away from us, and he can take his entire quarter's budget and buy fuel to come visit us, or he can use his budget throughout the quarter to visit lots of other churches. And so as a result, he doesn't get our way very often. It's just the laws of economics make it really hard to come out our way. But
this is one of the reasons that our project is where it is. Our people, the people we're serving, were not getting any true mentoring and help from the conference or the mission because they're too far away. Like, yeah, oh well, can't get everywhere. And so by us being there, we are able to support them ourselves, but also when we go every 3 months, when we go to town shopping, we are able to bring Bible workers one way or the other, pastors, nurses one way or the other, or both, and us being there boosts the area and helps with this aspect of it as well.
So this PNG for Christ was like a camp meeting that was 2+ weeks long. And so after people had come from miles and miles away, we helped transport them back. The blue and yellow canoe is ours. It's 60 feet long and wide enough in the back. You can take a 55-gallon drum and lay it down sideways.
It has two 75-horse motors on the back. And when I've been in it with a pretty decent amount of cargo and 32 people, it fits, but you're all pretty tight.
But the most that I have heard that went to a youth congress while we were gone, they piled about 72 people into our canoe.
I really hope they counted the kids.
But well, it was youth congress. It was mostly young people.
Yes.
But it wasn't little babies.
I'm sure the babies didn't count. So that would have been a very full canoe. If you look at it, this canoe has plenty of freeboard. It's fine. It's crowded, but it's floating high. It's fine.
So it's one big tree that's been hollowed out.
Another thing we are doing is, again, materials. We have a printer. We're going to be replacing it, but we have a printer that we use to print the 28 fundamental belief Sabbath school lessons or children's Sabbath school lessons. And we also do training, teaching the leaders. So much of our work is not just the groundwork of the making friends and influencing them and bringing them to Christ, which is very important, and we are doing that. But even more so, we are mentoring the leaders who often, with the pastor come, baptize, leave kind of style, the leaders have not had a Christian to walk beside them, the path of faith, and say, this is what it is like to be a Christian in the day-to-day basis. So I do a lot of teaching the teachers. I've taught Sabbath school leaders how to teach. I've taught them, you study the story, you tell the story at home. You want to read it and understand it to the point that you are excited. And when you tell the children's Bible story at Sabbath school, the kids think you saw it happen because you're excited and you understand the story. And some of the teachers didn't even understand that that was a thing. So as we are teaching the teachers, it is one of the key areas we recognize for strengthening our church.
So this year, the Bibles, they have little tiny ones of these Bibles, Talk Pigeon Bibles, that are about this big, and the text is, my eyes are getting to the point where I can't read that good anymore. And in the village where they didn't grow up having as good nutrition, because all they had was the fish and the starch, not so much with the vegetables, their vision is probably worse than mine, a lot of them. And so we've found that buying the tiny Bibles they can have a Bible, but trying to read it in a poor light condition in a house without any light or any real windows, they need a larger text. And so the big full-size Bibles had been out of print for maybe 2 years. And in March of this year, they finally got a new supply from the Bible Society. And so we were able to buy a bunch of Bibles. And at the same time, we had been given a bunch of English Bibles. So we distributed them at the same time. Those who could speak English got an English Bible. Those who don't read English but could read Pidgin got a Pidgin Bible. And so this is everyone at our local church that was very happy to receive their Bible. When you have just before this, I had given the head elder his own Bible, a replacement Bible, because he no longer had most of Genesis or more than the first chapter of Revelation.
They do their best to take good care of them, but the environment in Papua New Guinea is really hard, especially on books and paper.
Yeah, they build their houses in the floodplain, so that part of the year it's designed that way. That part of the year the water will flood all around their house. This is wise. The wise man builds his house in the mud alongside the river. The foolish man, the missionary, builds his house up on the hilltop where the termites do not get killed every year. His house is going to fall down faster.
Because when the floods come, the house in the floodplain, the water comes up underneath the house. He just has to, walk out the door down 2 steps and get in your canoe. I mean, the houses are up off the ground, so you just tie the canoe to the porch railing, basically. And it kills the termites, at least a lot of them, at least the ones that were underwater now. But the foolish man who builds their house up on the hill, they're going to be spraying and cutting weeds and watching for termites every day of their lives because they're foolish. Anyway, the church elder, when he told that, and when he tells it for a object lesson, he just looks at Orion and just grins because he's like, we're the smart, we're the wise people, the missionaries, the foolish people. Culture is great fun.
So this is a picture of some fish that have been caught, and God has called us to be fishers of men. I was giving a few years ago, I was giving a evangelistic series of meetings in a village about 2 hours, 3 hours upriver from us. And to help draw the people in the evening, I was showing 10 or 12 minutes of the Jesus film. It's voiced over in Pidgin English. And they got to the part one night where they had Jesus telling the disciples to throw the net on the other side of the boat, and the net came up full of fish. And I grew up vegetarian as Adventist. I did not grow up eating. I do now. In Papua New Guinea, I've said, in our own home, we're mostly vegetarian, but in the village, when we're interacting with the people, I'm not going to put myself to a standard that they cannot reach because of economics, that they feel that, the missionary is going to go to heaven more likely than us because he's a better Christian than we can afford to be. I said, no, Jesus ate fish, I can eat fish. So, or, chicken, or, but they don't get very much of that. They mostly, fish is what their staple is. But when that net came up in the video, all the small children, I mean, the adults might have sort of gasped a little bit and enjoyed the picture and enjoyed the thought of all these fish, but it was the little children that were just dancing up and down, clapping their hands, screaming their heads off, because there was going to be enough food for everybody and everyone was going to have a good meal. And it just makes me want to have that kind of hunger for souls. So let me turn to our I was supposed to have this earlier, but Ephesians, I hope this is the right, Ephesians 6, verse 12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Papua New Guinea, especially our area, is steeped in spirit worship, devil worship. Witch doctors believing that they're manipulating the spirits and controlling things, putting curses on people, this kind of thing. And Satan has definitely tried his best to keep missionaries from succeeding in our area. We're following a missionary back in 2012. He and his wife and two little girls came. They'd only been there 8 or 9 months. And he was in the wrong place at the wrong time while they were cutting down a tree. And a branch from another tree, I don't know if jungle vines were connecting or something. Anyway, it broke off and killed him. In this picture, we had just before this, I'd been starting to have some studies with local church leaders to deal with the fact that a former, well, he was a current Adventist pastor, just not currently at our area, in a different area, but when he had been stationed at May River, he and the people had not gotten along well. So evidently when he left, he told everyone else to go down to the canoe and he was going to finish up at the church. And he finished up at the church and left. And then afterwards, he sent word back and said, your church isn't going to grow because I put a curse on your church. Until you apologize to me, I won't lift the curse. And so I had the church head deacon, I think it was, come up to me and said, we need you to give us fuel so we can go down and get this pastor so we can have him come up and apologize to him, have him lift the curse on our church. And I said, nothing doing. He doesn't have that power. And let's have some Bible studies about curses. And I said, just for the church leaders. And, well, I only had 2 studies. And Satan wanted to stir things up and keep those studies from continuing on. And so some young men got drunk and they got into a fight. And we have 2 villages very close to our house is on government land, but there's 2 villages close by. And the villagers from upstream came down to the downstream village, and in the fight, one young man was killed. And my wife Karen was on day 3 of her malaria medicine for an attack of malaria, so she wasn't sleeping good. And it's like 2 in the morning, and she shakes me awake. Orion, we need to pray. There's a big fight down in the village. And I'm, huh? Yeah, they do that a lot. She shakes me awake. No. Orion, wake up. This is serious. This fight is different than normal. We need to pray. So we prayed. I got up, looked to the window, saw people with flashlights that were hiding the flashlight, so it just barely would show on the ground in front of them, and coming up the hill past our house to the clinic and things. And so I said, this is definitely not normal. Normally they just shine their light and let it fly wherever the light, they don't hide where they're going. And so I went out, and the young man had been killed. His friends changed their tone when they saw me. Evidently what they told the nurses was that because one of the nurses had been involved with the making of the beer or something, the homebrew, I don't know, anyway, or in drinking it, I don't know. Anyway, they were going to burn down the clinic and all the nurses' houses, which the nurses' staff house is on one side of our house, and the clinic is on the other side of our house. We're right in the clinic area. And so I was outside, and they were starting to burn houses in retaliation for the young man's death. They wanted to kill 5 people to make up for the one death, but thankfully God intervened and no other additional lives were lost. But 27 out of 32 houses or so were burned down. And so people that were selling fuel, you could hear their empty fuel drums blowing up every so often. The large ones, they mostly just threw those in the river and stole them and took them, tied a rope to them and pulled them back upriver or something. I don't know. But anyway, the empty ones, they just left, and then you could hear them blowing up. Fast forward to February of this year. While peace was sort of maintained there, a few months later, we had to evacuate. A few months later, we were given word from the people that had been involved with the burning of the houses. Look, we've made peace. We want you back, because we'd evacuated to town. Please come back. And we'd gotten different assurances from members of the community that it was safe for us to come back. We were just getting ready to do that when my wife broke her leg. And anyway, so that was back in 2019 is when the original fires happened. Now come up to February of this year, and I was distributing these Bible lessons one Sabbath morning. I'd printed them all up, and I gave them to the baptismal class. That same evening, people sitting around their fires for supper, especially the young men, got talking, Satan encouraging them or whatever, steering their thoughts. They said, everyone upriver, they're buying motors, they're buying solar panels, lights for their houses, and we're still barely struggling, surviving. We need to teach them a lesson because they haven't paid us any compensation for burning our houses. Thankfully, no fighting occurred that night. The next morning, one of my church elders, who's also my head canoe driver, he came knocking on the door about 6:30, which is early. They know that I like to sleep until 7:30, but then he knocked on the door and said, just want you to stay on the hill here today. Don't go down around the village. Don't go anywhere. Just stay up here and you'll be fine. We've already discussed it, and you aren't going to be harmed, but don't be alarmed if you hear gunfire and bombs going off and things. And don't call the police, because we've already sent word to the police that if they come, we'll float bombs on the river and blow them up underneath their boats. And so that's always what will just set your heart at ease on an early Sunday morning. Anyway, so after calling AFM headquarters and things and letting them know to pray, that I stayed in the house a little bit, and then I said, well, I'm going to go down to our boat shed and just see if I can talk to the village leader. So fuel shed, I call it boat shed, but it's just where we store the fuel. We don't store a boat in there. And I go down there. I see the village leaders, along with all the men, underneath a little shade house on the other side of the river. About 50 of them gathered together, shouting and yelling. And I said, well, it looks like the village leaders are the main village council, as well as other older, mature men of the village, are trying to keep a lid on it. If I call them over here, then there's no one over there to keep the lid on the pressure cooker. Try and keep things under control. So I didn't bother calling them to talk to them. I just sat down there and read my Bible and prayed that God would intervene. And several hours later, the sun was getting into the afternoon. Some of the time I hadn't been praying. I'd been talking with a visitor from upriver who had come down to the clinic for his wife to get some medical treatment. But anyway, the sun was starting to cook me, and so I went back to the house about 2 in the afternoon. So from 9 to 2 or so I'd been down there, or 8:30. And Karen meets me at the door. What's happening? Are we evacuating? I don't know. She was worldly wound up, and I was just, well, I've prayed. The people have sort of dispersed. It doesn't look like anything's going to happen. We're all right. But the next day, no one did anything. Everyone just stayed in their houses, sort of watching, is anything going to happen or not? But by Tuesday, my boat driver came back and said, you did the right thing. Where your boat shed is the sort of the dividing line between the two villages. And our house is where back in the day, the Australian policemen that were controlling the area, that's where their police station was. And so for the local people, I am the representative of the government, the representative of the church, and the village leader was able to tell the young men, see, Orion is sitting there on the riverbank on the line between our two villages. If you're going to go attack the other village, you have to go through him, and he represents the government, and he represents the mission, and you can't, he's there watching, you can't do anything. And that was the farthest thing from my mind when I went down there. I was just going down to try to, lend my presence, yes, to stop the fight, but I didn't think that I was just praying and asking God to intervene. But he does.
Okay. The Holy Spirit had been stirring in Orion for Orion to go down and do that. And Orion was acting in obedience. And when you act in obedience, at least in this particular instance in our lives, you're at the house. I had our bags packed. I was ready. If we were going, we would have had the door locked in less than 5 minutes because I was ready. And I had been praying. I wasn't scared, but I certainly was not at peace. So watching how God used Orion and the verse that says, be still and know that I am God. That's what Orion did. And his obedience wasn't doing some big thing, but it impressed me how much God uses our obedience, whether it feels like a big thing or not. It was huge in our lives this year. And I'm so thankful that Orion listened to God and obeyed him.
So just another quick little story. This is a cassowary, and it's a large flightless bird. And there was a cassowary that was sighted across a little pond from down the hill from our house. And the call went out, and it was around lunchtime. All of a sudden, anyone that was on our hill started running in the same direction, shouting and running, carrying if they had a bush knife, they were whacking stuff as they ran and making lots of noise. And they were going to go catch this cassowary. We asked what was happening. They said, oh, there was a cassowary that was seen down over there on the other side of that pond, on the island in the pond or wherever. So all of our workers that were working on building our house, we're staying in an old house that a different missionary lived in years ago, but it's been on the hill for 30 years, and it's ready to fall down from the termites. If Karen feels the whole house shaking, first thing she does in the middle of the night is just reach out and see if I've gotten up to use the restroom, or is it really an earthquake? Because you can't tell the difference. But we'd hired a local faithful Adventist carpenter to oversee the work on the house. And he's retired. He's in his 63, 64, 65, somewhere in there. And he sort of teased all the guys when they came back, dripping from their swim across the pond. So where's the cassowary? I thought we were going to eat good tonight. And whether it was to save face, but it shows even if they don't truly believe it, it shows their mindset. My church elder, I have both church members and non-church members that are workmen building the house, but my church elder said, "Oh, that was not a real cassowary, that was a spirit cassowary. If it was a real cassowary, we would have caught it." And the carpenter just shakes his head and chuckles and says, "What did you expect it to do? You expected to sit around waiting like a chicken for you to come and get it?" He said, "You were making so much noise, it was gone long before you ever got to the bottom of the hill." But that same elder, this story took place a few years ago. That same elder, back in end of last year or early this year, I wasn't in the village at the time. He went to one of our more remote church plants to hold some meetings. And when he got there, he was told, "The local witch doctor put a curse on you." And he was telling me the story afterwards. He said, "I didn't go just wandering around in the jungle, but I stayed there. I did not just tuck my tail between my legs and go back home. I stayed, gave the meetings, and then I went back home because I know that God can protect me." And so we're seeing growth. We're seeing that people are understanding more and more of the fact that Satan is a defeated foe, but he isn't giving up easily. Some friends of ours that are not Adventists, but were Bible translators, about 6 hours downriver from us. We were visiting them in town one day, and we'd both come out for supplies about the same time, so we were both in town together. And they said, "You know what your people, we're not saying your church members, but the people from your area, you know what they say when they come down and talk to our villagers?" And I said, "No, tell me." And they said, they have this saying, they say that Satan might have been born somewhere else, but he grew up and became a man in May River. Our area is known for the strength of the witch doctors, that they have more powers than other witch doctors. They've given themselves more completely to Satan or whatever. Satan is, as we know from the Bible, he's the prince of this world. He has power. And in Papua New Guinea, as opposed to places like the United States and Europe, he shows it in different ways. I don't know if my time's running away, but I don't know if you've heard of an author. He's passed away now, but Roger Morneau. He wrote Incredible Answers to Prayer and things like this. He also wrote a couple of other books, A Trip into the Supernatural and Beware of Angels. As he was being introduced to Adventism and Christianity, he was also, at the same time, a friend of his was sent by the high priest to Satan in whatever place he was up in Canada to bring him Satan had marked him to take the place of the high priest. And so he had some insights that were given by this high priest to Satan. The high priest told him, our master has chosen in the Western world to make himself a cartoon creature that has no real power, to trick people into believing that he doesn't exist so they don't have to worry about him. He's very cunning. But in other parts of the world, he shows his power more openly. We live in one of these places where Satan chooses to show his power openly. Does he still use his power in ways here? Yes. He's cunning. He's studied the human mindset for 6,000 plus years. If he can trick us one way or another, it doesn't matter to him which way he tricks us, just so long as our focus is not on Jesus. Because when we don't have that connection with Jesus, we don't have the strength to oppose him. It's only through Jesus and his blood that we can overcome the attacks of Satan. And in our group, this is the missionaries in our area and our supervisor. First, you see on the one side, you see myself and Karen. Next to us are a new couple that just arrived in March of this year. He's an ordained pastor from Michigan. Well, he's not from Michigan, he's from California, but he's spent his pastoral years for the last 6 or 7 years in Michigan Conference. And they've come to join us, working in that same remote area where my canoe driver said that he'd gone and they'd been told that witch doctor had put a curse on him. And then there's another couple, Jack and Lana Sample, and their daughter. The guy in the red hair in the back is our supervisor. He was a missionary in Papua New Guinea years ago. I was a student missionary under him. But Jack and Lana Sample and their daughter Corey, she grew up as a missionary kid in Papua New Guinea with her parents for a couple of years. They had started a project in our area, and then for various reasons, their project was shut down. And so once they've retired, they felt God's calling to come back to finish the work that they'd started. And so back in 2023, they came back to Papua New Guinea. They sold their house in somewhere out in Washington State or Oregon, anyway, right near the line. And they are not currently with Adventist Frontier Missions as missionaries. They're independent, supported by their local church in State Line, Washington or Oregon, anyways, the State Line Church. And so the three of our teams in different geographical areas. None of us are very close to each other. Both of the others are about 4 hours away from us, but that's next door in our, not quite, but it's not so far away. But these are our team that's working to reach this whole area of several thousand villagers. Well, probably 20,000 or more easily, but I don't have all the statistics for village size and everything. But we're working together as a loose-knit team to reach this whole area for Christ. And I invite you to join in praying for us. As Karen said, we have a newsletter. We have ways of communicating and letting you know what's happening. And God is definitely moving forward. As it says in the Bible, the harvest is ready, the laborers are few. We're getting lots of calls from areas around saying, please help us set up a church school, a church-run school in our area. Help us set up a clinic. Send us a pastor. A few months ago, our local pastor that we helped send through Bible school has come back now and working with us. He was holding some meetings at the waterfront, and he was giving the morning worship. He was having a week of prayer, basically, and he was giving the morning devotional on the waterfront, and there was a pastor from a local, well, not too local, but nearby, different congregation, different denomination, that he was paddling upriver, and he stopped to listen to the pastor speak. He got done, and the worship was finished, and he paddled over to the side and said, I need you to come and speak to my church. The message you gave is from the Bible and it's truth. And just come and hold some meetings and we'll become Adventists. There's, in Papua New Guinea, it calls itself a Christian nation. But what we have the most problem with is people mixing Christianity, trying to mix Christianity with spirit worship. Part of what we're trying to do is develop Bible lessons that address this spiritual conflict. They go through Bible lessons that have been prepared from, Voice of Prophecy or wherever, and translated. And I just haven't found any Bible study that we present here that's been prepared here in America that tells you what to do when someone's put a curse on your child. And when they say, well, we studied with the pastor, we got baptized. They didn't say anything about what to do for when someone puts a curse on your child. So since the Bible obviously doesn't say anything about that, then if the Bible doesn't say anything, then we can go back to our traditional beliefs and go to the witch doctor and take care of that off on the side. And that's not how it works. And so we as we've been there for 8 years now. 5 years. 3 of the years after those fires, between fires, COVID, and Karen breaking her ankle, there were 3 years that we were not in the village. And when we came back, it was almost starting over in some ways. But I can tell more stories, but our time is running to a close. But God honored Karen they did the surgery wrong. We came back to America. We were here a year. And finally, Karen said, if I'm going to be crippled the rest of my life, I can be crippled in Papua New Guinea as well as I can here in America. And as soon as we made that decision, God opened the door for us to find a retired hand surgeon, a semi-retired hand surgeon, 80-some years old, still practicing, that was willing to take out some of the screws in her leg. And then last year, we were able to get the rest of the hardware removed. And now she can run and jump. And before, if she stepped wrong, she could be on crutches for another 2 weeks before she could walk again. And so we praise God that He's made that possible, and that she is now back to being able to fully function. And when we put ourselves in God's hands and let Him guide us, He watches out for us regardless of where we are. Bad things can happen to us over there or going to the supermarket. But we have seen time and time again where God has intervened to protect us from from armed gangs, from different things. And we know we serve an all-powerful God. And we're happy to share more stories one-on-one with you and visit with you. If you have questions, please feel free to ask them after the service is completed. We appreciate the chance to share with you what God is doing in our little corner of the world, and ask you to pray about partnering with us to reach these precious souls for Christ. Thank you.